Well, back here at home, construction is underway for two new agricultural inspection stations over in Jackson County, but their addition has raised some concerns among Jackson County residents.
This evening, they had a meeting to discuss their concerns with Florida's Department of Agriculture Commissioner Wilton Simpson and his staff. News Channel 7's Emily Clegg was there.
Two new agricultural inspection sites are under construction in Jackson County, one at the Alabama border on Highway 231 and another off Highway 2 at the Georgia border. The new facilities will require trucks to stop before entering Florida, according to the Office of Agricultural Law Enforcement. State officials say these inspections ensure the safety of Florida's food supply by identifying unsafe food and detecting plant and animal pests and diseases that could harm Florida's agricultural industry.
There's a lot of production ag here, close to 100,000 acres of traditional row crops. So there is a need to make sure that we have a safe product for the general public.
But the new stations have raised a few questions about agricultural law enforcement in the area.
There's a lot of concern in regards to having livestock in compliance with the rules and regulations. There's also a lot of questions in regards to the products that we've produced here, the commodities, peanuts, the cotton. Then a lot of these products are transported across state lines, and that's where the questions really come into play.
To answer those questions, the Jackson County Agriculture Coalition and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office held a public meeting with the Florida Department of Agriculture Commissioner Wilton Simpson and his staff Monday.
I think tonight was a really good evening for the commissioner and for the general public. There's a lot of legitimate questions. I think the questions went on for 40 minutes.
The stations are set to be operational by the end of the year. Agriculture Commissioner Wilton Simpson says the stations will protect Floridians at the northern border. In Jackson County, Emily Clegg, News Channel 7.
Well, according to the Jackson County Farm Bureau, 75 agricultural law enforcement officers have already been hired and have begun patrolling the Panhandle.